And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day, another great week, in fact, in this greatest nation on God's green earth. A great week, the fact that it begins with reports from Sky News that Iran has fired 2 missiles at a U.S. warship near the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S., our government, our military, deny that report. They say it will start freeing up ships. U.S. Navy destroyers will be crossing the key waterway despite Iranian warning. The UAE, the United Arab Emirates, one of our allies in the Gulf, has intercepted Iranian missiles. Meanwhile, the analysis is that Trump's challenge of Iran's stranglehold on the strait is a sign of frustration. Eyewitnesses say the sound of war can also be heard from the Israel-Lebanon border, not involving Israel and Lebanon, but involving Israel and the Hezbollah terrorist gang. The week in video includes what Trump told Sky News. We will be getting to that. We'll also be speaking to the very eminent Dr. Robert Pape of the University of Chicago, who's been with the show before, who warns about the coming age of violent populism in the United States. He also warns that what the first 60 days actually changed in the Iran war was to make Iran vastly more powerful. And Professor Pape says the next 30 days will be even worse. We'll be speaking to him later this hour directly. Meanwhile, there is this from the Strait of Hormuz. 2 U.S. flagged vessels have successfully passed through the strait, the military said, but Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has said, no, the Americans are lying. The statement is baseless. Nobody's gotten through. This, according to state media from Iran. The U.S. earlier denied Iranian media reports that a U.S. ship was hit by missiles from Iran. That would be a very serious matter if any of that is true. Trump announced yesterday that beginning today, the U.S. Navy would, quote, guide foreign ships that have been left stuck near the Strait of Hormuz since Iran closed the widely used sea passage, and that any interference from Iran in this process will be dealt with forcefully. U.S. officials told Axios that U.S. naval forces won't escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz. If they've changed that position, it's not clear. But they would provide ships with information to help them navigate the passage and avoid Iranian-planted mines, and that the Navy would protect them against Iranian attack. A U.S. Central Command tweeted later that day that the operation would include U.S.-guided missile destroyers, more than 100 aircraft, and 15,000 service members, men and women in uniform. 15,000 involved. Whether this involves what they call boots on the ground or not, we don't know. Nobody knows. Meanwhile, there's this breaking from CNN. The Supreme Court of the United States temporarily restored telehealth and mail access to the abortion pill mifepristone. Mifepristone. And that occurred just hours ago, responding to an emergency appeal that warned of potential chaos for patients who had already made appointments to access the drug. The administrative stay is far from a final decision, but it rather maintains the status quo regarding this drug, mifepristone. for a few days while the court reviews emergency appeals filed Saturday by the drug's manufacturer and the maker of a generic version. The order puts on hold a decision from the conservative Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals that reinstated a nationwide requirement that the medication could only be obtained in person, not through the mail, undermining access to the method of abortion that has grown more widespread since the court overturned Roe v. Wade. Justice Samuel Alito's order staying the Fifth Circuit ruling lasts until May 11th, and Alito requested a response in the cases by this coming Thursday, a few days from now. Meanwhile, last night, a shooting during a party at Arcadia Lake in Edmond, Oklahoma. 23 people injured and taken to hospitals close to Edmond, Oklahoma. Integris health officials say they are treating 13 patients at 2 of their hospitals. 3 remain in critical condition, and 4 others were seriously injured. The conditions of victims taken to other hospitals are unknown. No arrests have been made, and information about those involved has not been released. We will bring you the latest when that is available. But it does go along with part of what Robert Pape, Professor Robert Pape of University of Chicago, has been talking about, which is an age of violent populism, where it's now not one side or another, it's not right-wing or left-wing violence. It's everybody in America who seems to be more willing to consider violence for political purposes. There's this also concerning impact on the economy. CNN is reporting that oil prices rose and stocks fell on renewed concerns about the safety of transiting the waterway, meaning the Strait of Hormuz, after President Trump said U.S. forces would help guide stranded vessels today. U.S. gas prices could reach $5 a gallon if the strait remains closed, an oil market expert says. And there is this from the Dispatch. The Israeli Defense Forces announced yesterday that air forces targeted and killed 2 armed Hezbollah operatives in southern Lebanon after they were spotted moving weapons in a vehicle near Israeli soldiers. Israeli forces also conducted airstrikes on the southern Lebanese town of Habush yesterday, after having previously warned its residents to evacuate immediately. Hezbollah terrorists fired on Israeli troops in 2 separate rocket and drone attacks in southern Lebanon, causing no injuries. And with only 6 months left now till the midterms, there is all kinds of new polling data, which we will get to. But first off, the crisis that we're facing in the Iran war. It was never quite articulated this way, but obviously one of the purposes of this war, of this military encounter, was to make Iran less powerful, not to make Iran more powerful. And now Robert Pape writes about plausible scenarios in the emerging New World Order, which are darker still. Imagine Iran with control of about 20% of the world's oil, Russia with about 11%, and China able to soak up much of that supply. What is going on? What is about to start going on regarding the war in Iran? We'll get to that with Professor Robert Pape coming up here on the MedVed Show. It is a great honor to have back to the show one of our best received guests, Dr. Robert Pape of the University of Chicago. He's a professor of political science And he also heads a center in Chicago on strategy and international security. His upcoming book is called Our Own Worst Enemies, America in the Age of Violent Populism. And we'll talk about that violent populism just a little bit later. First of all, Robert Pape, you have a piece in Substack that is enormously arresting. And what it says is that, yes, things have changed profoundly since this war began 60 days ago. And those changes are not good. What's changed most because of this war?
Well, the big change that's now coming into focus is that America is losing its authority, its control, its influence in multiple regions of the world. And this is happening at the same time. And this is happening because of all the consequences of the Iran war. So we focused a lot on the near-term consequences, which are tremendous and absolutely crucial. That the war began with this effort by Trump to challenge all of history by having bombing that would change Iran's regime, which never happened in history. And here we are in the third month, and it's still not happening, and not in a positive way anyway, for the United States. And then that led to the lashing back in Iran taking the Strait of Hormuz. Well, that then led to these gigantic economic consequences for the world's economy. We're now having all of that unfold. It's not stopped, it's unfold, but now think of it as a third layer. Think of it as a third layer that we are seeing, which are the true geopolitical negative consequences for the United States, America's role in the world, America's future influence, not just for the Trump administration's influence, but for America's future influence going forward. Now, of course, we see this in the Persian Gulf itself, as Iran, just in the last a little over a week, the negotiations, as Iran understand it, are really very little about America negotiating with the United States. What Iran is doing is they're having negotiations with Pakistan. They're having negotiations with Russia, with other Gulf states, and these are to take advantage of their growing power position and basically make arrangements here that have at least the beginnings of arrangements that have very little to do with the United States. So, for instance, with Pakistan, one of the things that's now becoming news just recently is there are more land routes between Iran and Pakistan that are opening up. And of course, they're geographically adjacent to each other. But one of the ways you would bypass the economic consequences of the U.S. blockade is you would have land routes opening up. Well, this is incredibly important as we go forward, because this is what it means as Iran becomes more powerful in the world, as America becomes weaker. Suddenly, now relationships are emerging without America's even consulting, really, America.
Okay, you have to help explain this to people because it seems so extraordinary. Everything that we've heard has been how we have shot down airplanes, we've hit anti-aircraft facilities, we've destroyed the Iranian Navy. They have no Navy, they have no Air Force. How did they gain all this power all of a sudden? Because what your pieces make clear is that the increase in Iranian power is prodigious. It's historic. It's, you'll pardon the expression, epic. Epic fury has led to epic gains.
Epic power for Iran. Epic power for Iran.
Okay, well, so how'd that happen?
It happened with the combination of geography and diffusion of technology. So what has been occurring, and this is not unique to Iran, but over the last 5, 10 years is drone technology, which used to be the province of the United States. So if we remember back in, say, 2002, when drones first began to be used for reconnaissance by the U.S. military, this was a very precious, these were very precious. And then we started to put bombs on drones. This is very common with air power. But what's happened in the last 5 or 10 years is other states that have that are thought of as, say, second-ranked powers have now become very much common. Drones have been common use here. Ukraine has really led the way. And as that technology has diffused, it's cheap. So we saw with Ukraine donors. There are donors, the Pritzker family, Jennifer Pritzker in particular, is from my neck of the woods in Chicago. I occasionally we meet and I see her not every week, but I mean, and what happened about 2 years ago is she explained to me that she was going to become a big investor in Ukraine, especially Western Ukraine, for their new drone factories. Well, that is one of the big things that can happen because she's not the federal government doing this. It wasn't the Biden administration doing it. It's literally a donor who, of course, Billy, I mean, they're wealthy. They're not like you and me. Okay. But nonetheless, she was able to make a substantial difference on her own to the security of Ukraine because the drone technology had become so cheap. It just needed to be funded. Well,
and Governor Pritzker is running for president, right? I mean,
oh yes, exactly right. Yeah, so you're seeing that now. But back to then the diffusion. So then Iran, which had also been building more drones on the other side for Putin. So essentially, what Iran had become in the last several years was the drone factory for Russia's war on the other side with Ukraine. So you got mass drones coming on both sides. Well, that means that in 2025, literally 55,000 drones were produced in Iran and given to Russia for its war in Ukraine. 55,000. So just think about that for a moment. So now you marry this diffusing drone technology with geography, which is just a fate of accident of the world, that it just so happens that there is a thing, the Strait of Hormuz. It just so happens it's right on Iran's coast. And it just so happens that the interaction of that small choke point where 20% of the world's oil, gas, and 30% of the world's fertilizer and a lot of food and so forth go through, it just turns out that is just right there is a geographic pivot of history. You marry that with technology of the drones, suddenly you have the ability for Iran to selectively blockade what goes through that strait.
We need to take just a moment's break. You've written about this age of violent populism, and you have an upcoming book called Our Own Worst Enemies, America in the Age of Violent Populism. How'd that happen, and what does that mean for our future? We'll continue that conversation.
Medved.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
An honor to welcome back Dr. Robert Pate, who has been speaking about the shifting of great powers and the emergence of Iran. Despite some of its setbacks on the battlefield, Iran has actually greatly risen in terms of world influence, significance, and power. So what about the United States? What is going on with our violent populism? People spoke about that and spoke a little bit about the rise of political populism, of political violence here in the United States right after the attempted shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Is this phenomenon something that is nationwide, that is pronounced, that represents a significant change long-term for the country? Or is it just a few attention-getting incidents? What's going on, Dr. Dave?
It's a major phenomenon. It is national. And as bad as the Iran war is, and as devastating that Iran war will be for our power and influence, violent populism in America could even be worse. So, starting about 5 years ago, I began to do serious research on political violence in the United States. And I wanted to know the answer to the question you just asked me. Is this a tempest in a teapot? Is it just a handful of events? What's really going on here? And I discovered something that really blew me away. And then our researchers, we kept stress testing it, and this just would not go away. Here is the key fact. The key fact is tens of millions of Americans on both sides of the political spectrum find political violence acceptable for their goals.
How do we know that?
Nationally representative surveys. So when I first started to get an inkling of this, I met actually with David Axelrod, who's a friend. He runs, of course, a center at the University of Chicago. And I said, David, let's have lunch. There's something I'm really concerned about. And I've discovered, I think, something, but I want to know how to really make sure we understand this correctly. So David, of course, been running political campaigns forever and ... So I explained to him the reasons I was concerned. And the very first thing he told me is that you need not just national surveys, you need the top of the line national surveys, which are called in the technical jargon probability surveys, but in more common language, representative surveys. They're truly statistically representative on dozens and dozens of different dimensions of the body politic. And these are things that are much more expensive. So you can get the cheapies that can be done, and you can see the problems of the cheapies, or you can pay for the $100,000 plus, the Lexus model, which is actually the real thing.
But see, even without that Lexus model, it sounds like you're going to be losing sleep at night. That this is a great concern.
It's a great concern. So what happened is I went out, I started to beat the bushes. I had to get some donors to get behind this because it's not something you carry around. It's not like pocket change. So, but he was right. So really, Axelrod was exactly right. If you were going to do this at all, you had to do it at the top level. And what then we started to do in the summer of 2021 are these national representative surveys, which we have a lot of the top lines available at our CPOST website. That's Chicago Project on Security and Threats, and you'll see them, and they're just going to blow you away. Because first we started only doing surveys of political violence and support for political violence on the right. Well, after doing that for about a year or so, then we decided, well, no, this is bad, so bad. We better look at both sides. And it was even worse because the other side was at least as bad as the right. And that then led to these predictions. We're going to start to see the rise of political violence on both sides. I then started to meet with senior political leaders in Washington about this, also with our National Sheriff's Association, because I started to show them these really quite important. Think of it as strategic information. Here, it's not tactical. It's not telling you where the shooter is going to be, but it's showing you with this massive support would be volatile people who are maybe on the edge of violence for their own psychosocial reasons. This pushes them over the edge with the expectation of social approval. Well, in the last couple of years, we're seeing this with Mangione. We're seeing this with the Kirk shooter. We're seeing with the attacks on Nancy Pelosi. We're seeing this with the Hortman assassin here in Minnesota. So what you're seeing is exactly as we feared would be. It's come to be. And
is it similar between left and right? In other words, is there a greater susceptibility and greater acceptance of political violence on the left? Most
There
people
is a
on the
bit.
right believe there is more on the left.
Yeah, but it's only once this gets into the political sphere, small differences get exaggerated as if it's everything, and that's really a mistake. So yes, yes. So if we ask the question, do you support the use of force to remove Donald Trump from the presidency? It turns out that about 21% here of Democrats will support that. That's tens of millions of Democrats will support that. And if we ask the question, do you support the use of the U.S. military by President Trump to suppress Democratic protesters? That's about 16% of Republicans on the right. So yes, there's a little bit of a difference there, but I don't want to overread that difference, because what you miss when you look at a marginal difference is how big both sides are. This is huge on both sides. And this is what is the state of affairs in our body politic. And what's underneath it are some social changes. The big one, and there's several, and this book I'm doing will lay them out.
Quickly, go ahead.
Is we're transitioning from a white majority democracy to a white minority democracy. And that has never happened in our 250-year history. And it has enormous consequences for politics, who's in which party wins, what the platforms of the parties are going to be, what they're going to do with that political power. And so this is what is pulling our country apart. We're having major social change that's rapid. We're in the current transition generation, I call it. And that means this isn't something that's going to happen 100 years from now. It's going to happen in most of our lifetimes in the next, say, 15, 20 years, depends on the size of deportations and open borders. But what you're seeing is we can really understand the why we're seeing these high levels of assassination and also other events such as January 6th. We can also see the underlying causes of it. And this really gives us a big warning that for the fall, these will likely be the most dangerous elections in our lifetimes. 2028, possibly even more so. And this is not simply Trump is both a symptom and a cause at the same time. The real taproot here is this underlying set of social changes. And this is going to be with us for a while unless we do something to slow them down.
We will have to follow that up with Dr. Robert Pape. Fascinating. And your new book, Our Own Worst Enemy, coming out soon.
August.
In August. Okay. That's when you think of all the terrible things that could happen between now and August, and talking about violent populism, it's kind of a terrible thing. Posted our website at michaelmedved.com. You can participate in these conversations by subscribing to our YouTube channel. That's Michael Medved Official. Dr. Pape, Godspeed to you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you
so much.
The greatest show on God's green earth.
Listen.
It's the Michael Medved Show.
And listen.
And after speaking for a couple of segments with Professor Robert Pape, I think it's important to say this, which is part of what he has posted in the last couple of days. He suggests that the United States faces a difficult choice: either commit to a long-term effort to reassert control over the Strait of Hormuz, or accept a new global energy arrangement in which U.S. control is no longer assured. If it chooses acceptance, the outcome is clear. The international system will reorganize with Iran as a fourth center of global power, along with the U.S., China, and Russia. Yet if the United States chooses to reassert military control, it is in for a long battle, one it could clearly lose. The Iran war is not a military conflict, writes Pape, from which the United States can simply back out. with things reverting to how they were before Iran, would surely demand a heavy price and a new accommodation with the United States. But this price will surely be less costly than that of the alternative future. This is a transformational war. No, it's not an excursion. It's a transformational war. And if these changes continue for even a few years, the global order will change irrevocably. Today, President Trump had a good deal to say about Iran, and he spoke briefly on Friday, actually, when he was at Palm Beach International Airport, and he spoke about the War Powers Act, which he hasn't used to authorize or to legalize this particular war. Here's President Trump, clip 13.
Well, it's a very friendly blockade. Nobody's even challenging it. Nobody at all is challenging it. Just so you understand, many presidents have been involved in things that are very big. They never had to go through anything with respect to Congress. They considered it to be totally unconstitutional. And the Democrats in Congress that pushed this, and probably a couple of Republicans, they're hurting our negotiating ability, which is infinite right now. And they shouldn't be doing it. It's never happened before. No other president's done it. And I'm not going to be the first.
Even Obama was pushed by the Libya involvement and pushed by Democrats. And so was President Bush twice. And this is something that is simply not true, that no other president has been required to invoke the War Powers Act. Bush got congressional approval before wars. And that doesn't mean the wars worked out well, but it means that congressional approval meant that there was at least some unity by our governing authorities. This was President Bush speaking at the Forum Club in Palm Beach, Florida, speaking about Iran and whether or not it's really a war. This is clip 12.
It hit one yesterday, hit one the day before, during what they call a military operation. You know, they don't like the word war, and they call it a military operation because that way you don't have a war, you don't have legal problems.
Okay, is that the way to do it? And by the way, it's unclear to me whether he's talking at that point about Russia not calling it a war, or is it us? I'm not sure Russia as an example should be used for anything. Then clip 22 on the Attorney General Blanche on whether Trump is actually avoiding congressional approval. He was on the acting Attorney General on Beat the Press. Clip 22.
Is the president effectively arguing that he can avoid congressional approval by avoiding using the word war?
He's not effectively arguing anything except that he is trying to keep this country safe. We have kept Congress updated at every step of the way, consistent with what other presidents have done. President Trump is doing something that the past 5 presidents did not do. They promised to do it. They promised, oh, we'll stop Iran. Oh, Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. President Trump is doing what others have promised but failed to do. And as far as what we're doing with Congress, keeping them updated, we are doing so.
Okay, keeping them updated is not quite the same thing as working with them cooperatively. And part of this also indicates some of his future adventures that he has in mind. By the way, you could make a T-shirt out of that Todd Blanche acting Attorney General statement. He's not effectively arguing anything. It would be a great T-shirt. You know, picture of President Trump looking angry, saying he's not effectively arguing anything. I think effectively is the key adjective there. Meanwhile, Trump spoke at the Forum Club in Palm Beach and promised new U.S. action in another battlefield of the world. This is exactly what we need. Clip 18.
Originally a place called Cuba, which we will be taking over almost immediately. What we'll do, on the way back from Iran, we'll have one of our big, maybe the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, the biggest in the world. We'll have that come in, stop about 100 yards offshore, and they'll say, thank you very much, we give up.
Has it worked that way for Iran? No, not so well. The war jokes are as ineffective as some of the other elements of foreign policy. There is this for NATO Ambassador Matthew Whitaker speaking on Fox Business. Listen carefully. This is clip 17.
Assess the state of affairs between the United States and NATO.
Well, we've had better times, no doubt. But, one of the things that I would say is that this alliance is moving towards Europeans taking over the primary responsibility for the conventional defense of the continent. And ultimately, as we work towards that project, there will be ebbs and flows. But, one of the things that I think has a lot of us questioning what's happening is the value that we thought we had here at NATO. Ultimately, when we couldn't use our bases in Spain, the UK, and other places during Epic Fury, that changes the value calculation of the NATO alliance. And so I think there's a lot of us in the Trump administration that are recalculating that value proposition, and I've seen it as I've traveled the world, and I've seen alliances with the United States. And one of the things that I know is that it's a two-way street, that it's not just the United States providing defense and deterrence, that it needs to be our allies that are also stepping up, providing defense and deterrence as well. And
maybe it would help if they would be asked in advance, if they would be consulted, if they would be treated like partners. That's what allies really are. And meanwhile, coming up, a remarkable new poll that goes state by state across all 50 and tells you how Trump's doing in each state, where he has the highest ratings, where he has the lowest ratings. The highest ratings are, he has some places that are above 50%, where he has approval. He has a state with 51%. Which state is it? And then he has another state with 19%, where, 81% of the people in that state do not approve of what President Trump is doing. Also, there's California, there's Texas, there's more. It's fascinating to look at, and we will be joining you with that. It's also an indication of a big shift across the country. What does it mean? What's it about? Where are we headed? And not just in the midterm elections, but in the far future. That and more coming up in this greatest nation on God's green earth.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.